Welcome, lambs. Welcome to your Midweek Wednesday rant. I am your host, Kai, if you didn't know, and in today's rant, we're talking about a newlywed Oklahoma couple where the husband has been accused of killing his missing wife just weeks after their marriage. Now, my question is, how did it go from happily ever after just to ever after in such a short span of time? Let's find out in this week's Midweek Wednesday. Before we begin, I want to remind you that this episode is sponsored by my lambs in Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. If you want to be a supporter of Love and Murder and get extras, then join us over in Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. You do get a bunch of bonuses from joining over there. Now let's get into this rant. Cassidy Ritchie, who was a 39-year-old woman from Tulsa, Oklahoma, met and married Chris Edward Morland Jr., who was 49 on January 7th, 2024. So this is a really, really recent case. And also, since the case is ongoing, I want to say this is all alleged. On January 21st, Cassidy's parents reported her as a missing person to the Tulsa Police Department. Basically, she had not been in contact with them or her children since the day before, January 20th, which even though it was a day, that's kind of unusual for Cassidy, which again, that mom is the MVP because she didn't miss a day. She was like, look, she hasn't contacted us. My daughter never does this. She's missing. Police also told the public around that time that Cassidy has also been involved in a domestic disturbance with her husband, but they wouldn't go more into detail. On January 24th, police took her husband, Chris, into custody on warrants that were out in Medina County, Texas, so he already had warrants on him. During the interrogation, Chris told them various stories about where Cassidy was. Quote, Morland would not come off any of his stories and maintained that Ritchie was just somewhere visiting a friend. On January 25th, police requested the public's assistance in locating Cassidy. Finally, a tip came in that led police to Cassidy's car, which was near the I Don't Care Bar and Grill about 7 miles east of Catoosa, Oklahoma. Her SUV was found damaged and littered with off-road debris. So police went over to Chris like, hey, we found your wife's car. Here, can you really quickly sign this waiver so that we can search the car to see if there's any evidence as to Cassie's whereabouts? We can find her faster and you could be reunited with your new love. Instead, Chris said, no, I'm not signing jack squat. How about you go get a warrant? Now, my thing is, why are you sounding so hostile if you have nothing to do with your wife's disappearance? Is there anything that you could be allegedly hiding, Chris? Well, police kept the car by towing it in with a no-touch hold in place and got the warrant Chris told them to get. They said, all right, done and done. Now, I wonder what he thought was going to come of telling them to go get a warrant. Number one, you're in custody, so it's not like you can allegedly go out to the car and, clean stuff up or hide anything. Number two, even if you weren't in custody, they took it into custody themselves, well, custody, quote unquote. And then nobody was ordered to touch it. So it's not like they could have said, well, you planted evidence. So I'm wondering what you got on it. Time? Was it just time? On Sunday, January 28th, investigators looked inside the vehicle, hoping for clues about Cassidy's disappearance. But what they found underneath a pile of clothes in the back of the SUV was devastating. Instead of finding clues to her disappearance, they found Cassidy's lifeless body that had been severely beaten with blunt force trauma injuries to it. Now, since Chris was already in custody on Monday, January 29th, the charge of first-degree murder in connection with the death of his wife was added, as well as a $5 million bond. Now, while all of this is going on, it had also come forward that Chris had previously been involved in another domestic violence incident with a previous woman. On January 31st, 2021, police had been called out to the Oyo Motel at 12:57 a.m. It had been reported that a man had assaulted a woman in one of the rooms. However, when police questioned the hysterically crying woman, she told them that she had been seeing another man behind her husband's back. So this is an ex-wife of his. They'd been married for 4 years. She told police that when she told him, he slapped her in the face and then punched her in the mouth. Well, police looked at her face, saw the bleeding lip and the redness on her face, which is evidence to them, and arrested Chris and took him to the Wichita County Jail. On February 1st, 2021, he was released on a $2,500 bond for a Class A misdemeanor. Are you serious? You didn't even keep him that long. What, the next day he was released? This is why people think they can't get away, from domestic violence, because literally nobody's there to help them. You arrested him. He knows that you called the police on him. Then you released him out to wherever she was. I mean, that's another domestic violence in the making. Like, are you serious? Then on top of all of that, the case was dismissed on March 2nd, 2023. Really? So just nothing happened. So back to Cassidy. As friends and family are preparing for a celebration of life gathering, Cassidy's mother, Cheryl Ritchie, believes that Chris should be held without bond. Which, I mean, yeah, but also think about it. He's on a $5 million bond, which I doubt he's going to be able to get out. But then again, you never know. So this is where we've left the case of newlywed Chris Morland and Cassidy Ritchie. I will update you on this case as it moves forward. However, before I go, I want to remind you that if you're experiencing domestic violence, please try to get help. I know it's easier said than done, but try to get help. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233, 1-800-799-7233, or go to thehotline.org. All calls are toll-free and confidential, and the hotline is available 24/7 in more than 170 languages. So I know I usually do cases that's from a little further back. This one was very, very current and very shocking. I wonder what his excuse was. They literally just got married, which there's never any excuse. I'm just curious as to what he's saying his motives are. This is a very sad case. I know she thought she was going to have, you just got married. You think you're going to have the rest of your life with the person that you just got married to, and literally 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, he's ending her life. Horrible. For this Midweek Wednesday's poll, it's going to be a poll to see how prevalent domestic violence is. I do want to see how prevalent it is. How many people that listen to this episode has experienced domestic violence, been around domestic violence, so a friend or family member you've seen, or doesn't have any history with domestic violence at all. Those are going to be the three options, just because I want us to see how prevalent domestic violence is. So please answer truthfully. Don't just answer for shock value. So have you been a victim of domestic violence? Do you know anyone who's been a victim of domestic violence, or none of the above? Now, let's get into a couple of the poll questions that I previously had out. Last week's Midweek Rant poll question was, do you think Joseph had help with the murder? And this came from the episode Tennessee Man Charged with the Brutal Murder of His Wife with a Hammer. Remember, they were saying that they think he had help. So I was asking, what do you think? And 100% of y'all said there was no evidence to support that he had help, which I agree with. I think he did it alone. Now, another poll that I had out was from an episode from December 20th. This episode was Woman Beats Boyfriend's Alleged Mistress to Death with a Walker. Remember that one? And the question that I had was, have you ever fought over a guy or woman? Would you or would you not? These are the three questions. So 28% of you said that you have, 14% said that you haven't, but you would, and 57% of you said, hell no, you're not fighting over anybody. So I guess most of y'all are not fighting over anybody. I actually thought, if you listen to that episode, I kind of went through a therapeutic moment there, because I literally thought that I did fight over somebody. But then when I actually thought about it, I just fought to fight. It was an opportunity to fight. I can't 100% say that I will not fight over somebody, though, because, you never know. Love is crazy. Love makes you do crazy things. I don't want to say, hell no, I'm not fighting over somebody. And then something happens like in a couple of years and I come back here with my head hung in shame and like I fought over somebody. So we'll leave the window open. Hopefully I won't. That is my goal, not to. I do not want to fight over anybody. Fighting solves nothing. I'm older now. So my goal is to not fight over somebody. But you never know also. So anyways, I know I'm kind of making light here at the end, but domestic violence is a really, really serious crime. So please try and get help. And like I said, I know it's easier said than done, but please try and get help. So that's all I have for you for this Midweek Wednesday. Go ahead and answer the poll, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.